welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and let's talk about the mentality of Commander players. The Commander format is very different from a lot of other formats, particularly those 60 card formats. And if you're new to the format, you will notice a couple of strange things that, again, are very different from other formats if you're used to playing those other formats like I was when I first came to the Commander format. There is a lot to learn and there's a lot to get used to when you come to the Commander format, and a lot of it has to do with the mentality of a Commander player. There are two things in particular that I noticed very distinct differences when I played Modern to when I played Commander. These things that happened in Modern all the time, it was just the way you played the format. And then when I came to Commander, it wasn't done that way. And the reason why is because of the way people want to play the Commander format. So the first thing, fetch lands. Let's talk about that. Fetch lands, of course, in the Commander format, pretty popular. Also very popular in the Modern format as well. And everyone who plays Modern is going to be very familiar with what I am saying here. In Modern, I play my fetch land, and then I leave it there and I pass turn, regardless of whatever else I did on my turn, I don't crack it. I wait to crack that fetch land until my opponent's end step. Everybody does this in Modern. You wait until your opponent's end step to crack the fetch land and go get likely your shock land. The reason why is because likely you want to keep your opponent guessing, right? You want them to think, hey, I might have an answer to what you're doing. Always, you are cracking your fetch lands on your opponent's end step. And of course, in the Commander format, not really anybody does this at all. And in fact, whenever I'm playing against someone who does crack their fetch land on the end step before their turn, I'm thinking, there's a Modern player, guaranteed. Now, again, in the Modern format, you do it on your opponent's end step because you want to keep them guessing. Maybe you have a counterspell in your hand, removal, you have some sort of answer. You don't want to give them too much information. Heck, you might not even want them to know what colors you're going to get out of your deck, right? This stuff can be really important. In the Commander format, of course, they know exactly what colors you're playing because your commander is sitting in the command zone, so you're not hiding anything there. There is likely some Commander players out there that do wait until the end step before their turn to crack their fetch and go get that land. Sure, I'm sure it does happen, and yes, it still can be used as an advantage to keep your opponent guessing. Maybe you have an answer, maybe you don't. The other big reason why it is less important in the Commander format is because that shock land entering tapped or untapped is really not much of a big difference because, of course, you're almost always going to pay the 2 life because life is a resource in the Commander format. Whereas in Modern, the 2 life can make all the difference in the world in a game, and you're not going to want to pay the 2 life for that shock land unless you absolutely have to. So, of course, on the end step, you will have it enter the battlefield tapped and then untap on your turn, whereas in the Commander format, you don't really care that much, right? But the big reason why Commander players, I find, are almost always using their fetch lands immediately is because, of course, they want to do stuff immediately, right? I made a video about a year ago talking about Commander players want to do this stuff. You always want to be doing stuff on your turn in Commander. You very rarely will ever see someone just play and pass unless you're specifically playing a deck like that. Unless you're playing that super heavy control deck, you want to be countering, maybe you're playing a tall run deck, something like that. Sure, play a land and pass does happen, but almost always Commander players feel this urge to be doing stuff on their turn. Nobody just wants to play a land and pass. It feels really bad. That's why Commander players are always playing their fetch land, cracking it immediately, go get that shock land, pay for the 2 life, who cares, I got lots, and then I want to cast stuff. I want to be doing stuff on my turn is the big reason I find that Commander players are always cracking their fetch lands on their turn rather than waiting for their opponent's end step. The other big difference that I noticed immediately when I came from Modern and started playing Commander, and again, this is one that maybe a lot of people don't even pick up on, I noticed right away, okay? In the Modern format, of course, you have your phases of your turn. You have your first main phase, then combat, and then second main phase. So, of course, you can cast stuff on your first main phase, attack, and then cast stuff on your second main phase. In Modern, however, and of course in a lot of those other 60 card formats as well, you never cast stuff on your first main phase. Almost never. Unless, of course, you have a creature with haste that you want to cast and attack with right away. You almost always completely forego your first main phase except for maybe making a land drop. Other than that, you never cast stuff on your first main phase. You attack first, leaving all your mana open because, again, you don't know what your opponent's going to be doing or how they're going to react. And then on your second main phase, that's when you cast your spells after you have attacked. You leave your mana open till after you attack so that you are prepared for what your opponent's doing, or again, keep your opponent guessing. I'm not tapped out. I have answers in my hand. You don't know what they're going to be. So while I'm attacking, you have to try to figure out what my response might be, right? Almost always in Modern, players are casting all their spells on their second main phase after they attack. And of course, in the Commander format, that is absolutely not the case. And again, for me, I think this plays in a little bit to the first thing I was talking about, how Commander players want to do stuff. The first thing everyone thinks about on their turn is not attacking, maybe unless they're trying to close out the game and we're on like turn 8 or 10 or something. But almost always when a Commander player untaps on the turn, the first thing they're thinking is, I want to do stuff. So that is a big reason I think why Commander players are always casting spells first, and then attacking is like a secondary thought for them. They will sometimes cast stuff on their first main phase, then attack, and then cast more stuff on their second main phase. I would say I do that from time to time because, you do kind of want to see how your opponents will react to your attacking. However, there is a really funny, again, the mentality of Commander players, a really funny thing that happens in the Commander format because it is a multiplayer format. Again, that plays big into the mentality of the Commander format. The fact that it is a multiplayer format and you have to react to what all of your different opponents are doing, a big part of that plays into why Commander players very frequently cast stuff on their first main phase and then attack, which is the exact opposite of what you see in other formats. And the reason why, I think, is because of counterspells. That's right. And we all know it. We all have seen it 1,000 times before. I'm going to cast my stuff on my first main phase because I'm going to see who counters my stuff. And whoever does, that person's getting attacked, right? That to me is the main reason why Commander players like casting their stuff on their first main phase and then attacking, because they are waiting to see who's going to counter my stuff or possibly who's going to, screw with what I'm trying to do, because whoever is that person is the person that's getting attacked. And obviously, if you have a bunch of menacing stuff in play, a really powerful board, that is obviously going to be a deterrent for your opponents to do that as well, right? If I got a Blightsteel Colossus in play and I am casting a Rhystic Study and someone's like, yeah, I definitely don't want him to have that Rhystic Study, so I'm going to counter it. Guess what? That Blightsteel Colossus is coming at you guaranteed. So the Blightsteel Colossus or whatever other scary creatures you might have in play, maybe your Voltron Commander, is actually going to be a deterrent for people if they feel like countering your stuff, right? And everybody knows it. That is one of the funniest things I picked up on when I first started playing the Commander format. I noticed it immediately. I'm like, wait, everyone casts their stuff on their first main phase and then attacks? And I realized pretty quickly the reason why. People like casting their stuff first to see who's going to counter my stuff. All right, my creatures are coming at you. I'm going to hit you back for that. Now, is that an appropriate reaction? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, certainly it's not great threat assessment, but then again, it actually might be. There obviously is a lot of factors that will take place here, but it is certainly a mentality of Commander players, right? Something that absolutely Commander players do is, who's going to screw with me while I'm trying to do what I want to do, right? I want to do this thing on my first main phase, casting spells, equipping my stuff. Again, I'm trying to put my Lightning Greaves on my Commander and someone's going to remove it in response. That's the person I'm going to be attacking during combat, right? Again, we see this stuff all the time. The retribution factor, let's call it. Who's going to screw with me while I'm trying to do things? That is the person I'm going to attack. We all do it, I'm sure. It's a very funny, interesting interaction that I noticed immediately when I first started playing the Commander format. It is the mentality of Commander players, right? These funny things that you don't really see in other formats that are done in the Commander format, probably for a variety of reasons. Again, because Commander players just want to be doing stuff a lot in the Commander format. That's why they crack their fetch lands right away. That's why they don't want to have their stuff screwed with when they're trying to do things. And the retribution factor. You're going to screw with me. All right, my creatures are coming at you. I'll teach you who not to mess with. We all know that is a very important part of playing in the Commander format. Just a couple of funny interactions that I noticed about the mentality of Commander players. I'm sure we have all noticed it, right? If you are one of these people that have come from other 60 card formats and you're new to the Commander format, maybe you noticed it right away. If you have yet to play the Commander Commander format, I am letting you know those are some significant differences in the Commander format that I noticed that plays into the mentality of Commander players. You guys let me know at all if you've noticed anything else about the mentality of Commander players that is slightly different from the way people play the game typically from other formats. Let me know in the comments below, but that is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.